Okay, welcome guys. Welcome to the event titled Empowering Entrepreneurs, hosted in collaboration between Golden Key Stellenbosch and AFD Societies. I want to give a huge shout out to at the start for the team hosting this event. Thank you guys so much. It's awesome working with you. And a huge welcome to our guest speakers. We've got a panel of 3 experienced entrepreneurs giving you guys insights today. I want to also thank them at the start for taking the time to inspire our future generation and help educate our people and our community on Stellenbosch. So the panel will be Jean-Luc Tostee, Kevin Changoo, and Niel Louwrens. I will give them a small introduction each, just so you guys can be familiar with what the panel looks like. And yeah, I want to congratulate the people watching live, the attendees. I want to congratulate you guys on investing in yourself and actually taking our time to develop yourself professionally. If you are on our YouTube channel, please give us a like, a shout out on the comment, and reach out to us if you enjoy these discussions and you want to see some more, you have some ideas. We are really keen to develop a structure where we can develop professionally on Stellenbosch campus. I'm going to start off with just as I said, welcome to the attendees. And I think with entrepreneurship, to find opportunities, you have to be on the active lookout for it. So congratulations for joining in the session and being on a YouTube channel. I'm going to give it over to the speakers to introduce themselves and tell you a bit about their business. Let's go to Jean-Luc.
Cool, thanks very much, Sean. I appreciate it. I just wanted to also say congrats to everyone joining and thanks for taking the time to put the effort in. I mean, the biggest part of being an entrepreneur is juggling and getting your time management correct in this sense. And I know you guys are all approaching exams right now, so well done for taking the time out to do this. As a quick background, I'm Jean-Luc Tostee. I'm 24 years old. I studied at Stellenbosch University. I did a Bachelor of Accounting. And then I moved over to honours in management accounting. What I'll end up doing afterwards is a bit of a dash route, trying to find my roots and try and find what I want to do. So I'll end up getting into as a lecturer last year at Stellenbosch University, keep it nice and close to home. But at the same time, running 2 of my own companies. So I started a company called Tutor Elite and another company called Elite Textbooks, both while I was a student. And one was in my 3rd year and one was in my honours year. One was individually and one was with a partner. So kind of my aim for you today to take out through questions and through engaging and through our panel discussion is to take those grassroots of how do we get into a business from the beginning when we are students. You know, I did it when I was studying and I did it on a tough time schedule. How do we bring those principles into it? And then the rest of the panel will elaborate a little bit further. But really just taking that background of this is who I am. I've taken that base. I've managed to get it done and to juggle it while we were studying and see if we can bring those principles into your base at the moment. I think the best thing with being an entrepreneur is just getting started and diving in, throw yourself a little bit in the deep end, and what better place to do it than when you're a student with the support around you and you know, not all the rest of responsibilities. So I want to really encourage you to find something, to find an entrepreneur and find a venture that you can get involved in and just jump straight into it. But yeah, we'll carry on from here. I think Kevin's going to introduce himself next, and then we'll get into our discussions after Niel.
Hi, good afternoon, guys. I'd like to also iterate what Jean-Luc and Sean just said, which is thank you for joining in today. And it's impressive to be part of this workshop, specifically organized by students. And it's exciting to see a keen interest into entrepreneurship, which is obviously an area which would expand and improve the economy as a whole, and not just for South Africa, but the effects can be global if you look at other entrepreneurs. So an introduction to myself, I'm Kevin Changoo, and I am an alumni of Stellenbosch University. I did my master's, my MBA, 2 years ago. I completed it at the Stellenbosch Business School. And I also have a a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I got that a few years ago, almost more than a decade ago. So a little bit about myself in terms of my history, in terms of my work experience. I actually have a decade of experience at a corporate, which was in the fishing industry, which allowed me to utilize my process engineering studies from my initial degree. While working in the corporate, I comprehended what were my gaps as an individual in terms of the business world. And because I was very strong in terms of technical elements and in terms of maths and statistics, my gap was financial understanding. And unfortunately, or fortunately, in business, the language of business is finance. And if that's a gap of yours, because you haven't studied, and I'm not lucky enough like Jean-Luc to have studied management accounting, that was something that I needed to absorb and learn along the way. And that led me to actually then go in and to do my MBA. I chose Stellenbosch University because of the fact that it has such a strong leadership-centric focus. And later on in the topic, I'm going to speak about the importance of leadership when it comes to entrepreneurship. But while studying for my MBA, I initially did it for reasons of wanting to learn, expand, and to become an entrepreneur. The real benefit of the MBA, however, for me was leaving a completely different and a completely transformed individual, in the sense that you go in being very self-centric, like you are straight out of campus, thinking about yourself, thinking about how do you improve as an individual. And when you actually do your MBA, it actually forces you into the adult way of thinking, which is to become less self-centric and to think about a greater purpose, which is another key point that I'll touch on when we get into the actual discussion about entrepreneurship. So after working a decade in my previous business, or in terms of the corporate that I worked at, I actually then completed my MBA, and I then went on to actually look at other opportunities to expand and to grow in terms of the studies and in terms of the business knowledge that I just gained. And I took a gamble and joined a private business, which was in a completely different field to what I studied, both in my first or in my second degree, or in terms of the decade of work experience in the corporate. So I ended up joining a supply chain and logistics business, which is a transport and warehousing business, which was established, but had a lot of room for opportunity and a lot of room for growth. It's in a very red ocean type of market, which means that it actually required new blood, new thinking, and my business skills and business knowledge and strategic type of thinking, I'm hoping was the key differentiating factor for the business. And over the past 4 years, we've had exponential growth in the business. It's basically having a new way of thinking, bringing in fresh blood. And I think as a closing point in terms of my introduction, that's the exciting part about speaking to students, in the sense that you guys are all fresh. Your greatest strength, which of course is also your greatest weakness, is that you are fresh thinkers and haven't been exposed or fall into the dogmatic approach of thinking about established rules of business. And students like you are the ones that actually come into entrepreneurial roles and change the way business actually runs. So it's exciting to be part of this, and I look forward to moving forward with the discussion as it follows. So I think I'm going to hand over to Niel, who'll do his introduction now.
Hi guys. I don't know if you can see me. It seems like my picture has disappeared. Anyway, well, it seems like I'm in quite the company here. My history is a little bit checkered. I was born on the wrong side of the railway line. My father made standard 6. He was a barber's assistant. The day he passed on, he left quite an estate. The one thing he learned was, what he taught me was, hard work and education will bring you in everywhere. You guys seems to, and all the people that has joined seems to have got quite a hand up in life already, in the sense that you've got a great education. My entrepreneurial contribution is what I've experienced in the past 20 years. I went to varsity, Stellenbosch. I wanted to study agriculture. There was no girls in the class. I had a friend that studied law. He said there was 200 girls in the class. I said, hell, I must change subjects here. So I studied law, BA LLB. Did my articles as an attorney, then went into prosecution, state advocate, worked for the Scorpions, and then started my own practice. And at a very difficult point in time, I had to choose between a business opportunity and continuing in law. I 95% choose the business opportunity afresh with a lot of risk, but 5% of the law I kept because it was good for the business. Yeah, and what I experienced in that period of time with no financial background, with very little knowledge. Can you see me, Sean? With very little knowledge of the business I'm going into. I went into the business, and what I learned from that is, and why I'm telling you these stories is, later on I want to pull the thread through regarding entrepreneurship, is the one fundamental, and let me lay down this marker right away. If you are not prepared to take risk, if you are risk averse, don't become an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is somebody that tries 5, 6, 7 times, fails 6, 7 times, and make it on the 8th time. It'll take you 3 years to get your business up and running. Those are the cold, hard facts out there when you start a new business. So hopefully through the conversation of tonight, I can make some contributions in that regard of what do you really do when you're out there. Let me give you one example. I've heard 100,000 great ideas. I've not seen one of them being executed. And that is the difference between the ordinary man and an entrepreneur. Everybody's got a great idea. The guy that executes it and makes a business out of it is the entrepreneur. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Niel. Thank you, all the speakers. Thank you so much for the introductions. Now that the attendees or actually saw the panel, you guys all know where the different viewpoints come from. I think the panel is structured in an awesome way, where level of expertise and things will bring out different viewpoints in terms of entrepreneurship and what you will face. I'm going to give you guys the bit of an umbrella that we're working under in terms of the general points that we want you guys to pick up from this. But as soon as the entrepreneurs get into it and start throwing discussions around, I think we're going to gain a lot of insight apart from these. But we're going to start by how do you identify opportunity and how do you then turn it into a successful business, which is exactly what Niel touched now. The second step. A lot of people can do the first step and actually think of something great, but the second step of actually turning it into a business, gain some insights into that and some advice from our panel. The second point would be entrepreneurial strategy and business plan, where you guys heard about Kevin's experience. I think it will have some very relevant points or important principles that you should take note of. And then the final point would be sustainable entrepreneurship and funding advice, and especially sustainable entrepreneurship and as a big thing to build a business that has a very good chance at succeeding long term. A big word that came out of the introductions for me, as well as risk. risk is a huge thing for any entrepreneur. So I think that will be thrown around a lot, and how to manage it, how to be aware of it, how to plan for it. And then, yes, we will conclude with the best advice. But before we get there, I'm gonna pass over to our speakers to give us some insights into how they managed to make a success out of this. Let's start with Jean-Luc.
Awesome, thanks very much, Sean. Yeah, I'm very excited to get into this. So I think Niel hit the nail on the head there. You know, having a million ideas, having the best idea, waiting to find the best idea isn't necessarily going to ever make you an entrepreneur. You have to execute at some stage. So there's kind of two ways that you can go around, you know, identifying an opportunity. And I'll tell you my story, and mine's a little bit different to the standard route. But you can either identify an opportunity by, you know, just being exposed to it, keeping your eyes and ears open, walking around, seeing it and being like, oh, wow, you know, this could really work here. Or you can actively go out and pursue opportunities, you know, look at stuff that's working in other markets that might not necessarily have been implemented here, whether it's looking at something that's doing well in Durban and bringing it here, something that's working well in, you know, the USA and bringing it back here. So those are kind of the two models that I've seen. It's either, you know, opportunist, but at the same time keeping your brain alert to see these, or on the other side is going out and actively driving it. So from my side, and something that I really recommend to everyone out here, my way of starting my entrepreneurial venture was actually just a goal. It was a mind shift, a New Year's resolution, just to say, Jean-Luc, you've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. You've started little things since you were in grade 7 and 8, always trying to sell something here and there. Why don't you just take this step forward and take that bit of a risk and just start a business? Whether it works, whether it doesn't, just, you know, go and learn for a bit. So in 2017, at the end of my second year, December of 2016, I decided that New Year's resolution for my third year while doing BAC final year is just to start a business. I kind of put the plan in my head that, look, I can afford to, you know, maybe fund a 1,000 Rand, 2,000 Rand loss every month, and I'm going to use that as my contribution to my learning skill going forward. That's going to be my investment in myself for that year. And at the end of the year, if it doesn't work out, I'm just going to close it, and nothing lost. It was a winning opportunity because I learned a lot from it. So my then kind of strategy was slightly different. It was saying, okay, great. Well, my goal is to start a business for the year. It's something that I want to do. Now I need to look at an opportunity. There wasn't anything lying around, nothing I'd identified before, nothing that had sparked my interest I had prior knowledge to at all. It was saying, okay, great, this is the goal. Let's go look for something that can now work with the current structure that I have. I think that's a very important part of the package. You know, if you are studying at the moment, we need to be reasonable and say, look, I only have a limited amount of time. I only have limited capital. Maybe I've got no capital. I've got a different setting to if I'm trying to start a business in 3 or 4 years' time. So saying where I am now, if I want to start a business, let's put that on paper, make it my goal. And now let's try and find a business that can fit into my structure. It doesn't have to be a retirement plan business. Doesn't have to be the business that's going to make you a fortune. It's just about getting started and learning on the job and failing, but not failing, winning because you're learning at the same time. So my kind of strategy in that case was to say, okay, great, well, what do I have going for me and what don't I have going for me? With no opportunities in front of me, let's start researching. So as a student, you've got a limited time, so I needed a business that could run by itself. It needed minimal input. It needed something that I can employ someone fairly easily, not a lot of time intensity, not a lot of training and things like that required. I didn't have any capital. The reason I was starting a business at the same time is because I didn't have pocket money coming into university, so I'd always done side hustles to try and make some money. So that was a big driving factor. Had no capital to throw into it, and I'm sure a lot of guys can resonate with that. In terms of skills, you know, you come out of high school, you might be a big shot, you did well, you're studying BAC, you've got some accounting knowledge, but you don't really have business knowledge. So in terms of my knowledge, I didn't have anything superior to anyone else. The only thing that I knew that I had and something I wanted to develop further was work ethic and putting a hard work in. So I actually watched a very good YouTube podcast the other day, and it says 0 + 0 = 1. And I think that's what we need to focus on as entrepreneurs, as a student, is that I have 0 capital, I have almost 0 time, I have 0 knowledge going in. But if I add all of those together, I can still get to 1. I can still get a business going. I can still make that business successful. And the only thing that you're adding to that recipe is hard work and dedication. And I think that was kind of the big thing, is saying, great, let's find a business that interests me a little bit, but that I'm going to be driven to put the hard work into. So I ended up stumbling onto a tutoring company, so Tutor Elite, if anyone knows that. It's a company I started in my 3rd year. The main thing is it fell into those blocks. It wasn't necessarily the golden thread or the retirement package that was, attracting me to it. It was the sense that I could set up a tutoring agency that didn't require my time. I was linking people together, so it's not my physical effort going in. It didn't require any capital besides a couple $100 to get my logo up and going. Upskilled myself, doing YouTube courses on how to make my own website from scratch and all of those things. And it didn't need much knowledge. You could research it quite easily. And there's an entrepreneur.com, they have a document on it, how to start the company like this. And they have a lot of resources out there. So from kind of starting the business and the opportunity side, that's what I really want to get across to you guys, is that you don't have to hit the home run from the start. As Niel said, you can have a million good ideas, you can wait forever and ever to try and find the best idea, but unless you start, you're never going to learn. And you're never going to learn if that idea is going to fail or not. If you keep it inside, you don't do anything, you're not going to get that up there. So my big recommendation, we'll loop back to it the whole time, is just get started, make it a goal. You've got a whole 6 weeks of December holiday. I think we're only starting in March next year, so you've actually got longer. Go and make it your goal and take the time to research, take the time to upskill. I can't emphasize how important that stuff is, but just commit, dive in. You're at the best time of your life at the moment now. You don't have the other responsibilities. Yes, you might be juggling a lot, but just to give you my background, in my honours year, I was doing management accounting honours. I graduated summa cum laude. I was running Tutor Elite. I started a new business called Elite Textbooks. I was a mentor at my res after being a haka. I entered a international consulting competition at the same time, and we won that. So juggling all of those things is really hard. And I don't want to blow my own trumpet here, but what I'm saying is that this is where you learn to put effort into things that you really want to. And that's where I'm saying, it's just commit, and you'll very, very quickly see where you actually want to do it. If you want to be an entrepreneur, it will become your priority, and it will be balanced with your education and your commitment to being an entrepreneur. If you only half kind of want it, you'll pick up on that very quickly. And it might be a timing difference to then, maybe establish yourself a little bit more, and 5 years down the line, give it a go as an entrepreneur. At the same time, you'll skill out and, weave out the things in your life that aren't really that important, or things that might be taking up a lot of time, like social media at the moment, that aren't contributing, where you could take up a business and just learn. So my little 2 cents after that rant is just to say, let's get started. Let's put an idea on paper, reach out to me, we can refine it together, but really just commit to, within some sort of time frame, giving something a go. No matter how small it is, no matter how insignificant you think it might be, the amount of experience you're going to take out of that is unparalleled. You can only learn it on the job. You can only learn it by being out there. So really do jump into it. So I went on a little bit long there, but I know Calvin had a very similar sentiment when we spoke about it earlier in the week. So I don't know if he wants to jump on there about getting involved and just getting started at the same time while shifting perspectives, from corporate into a business. When do you know the right time is the right time to jump in? Calvin.
Thanks, Jean-Luc. I think everything that you said is basically, I'm going to reiterate it, but slightly, but my theme actually being more on the strategic element. But a lot of your elements, Jean-Luc talked on strategy. So when you spoke about research, or when you spoke about planning, or understanding, or even managing your time, because it's quite impressive that you were summa cum laude candidate and still started your business. So all of that goes with key strategic planning and then understanding how and where you actually fit in, and what your actual objectives are. So I think if I just had to pivot away from that and still iterate or reinforce what you were saying, and that is that you need to have a vision. So if you have an idea, it needs to, and it's a burning idea inside of you. I know you said that it may appear trivial to other individuals, but to you, you actually identify and understand, because the core business plan actually is inside you, and you understand that it can be a key differentiating factor and a game changer in the world that we live in. So if you consider people, other entrepreneurs, for example, the guy that created Airbnb or Uber, at some stage or at some point, many people would have thought that sounds ridiculous, or it doesn't make sense. So don't let anybody evaluate the validity of your dreams. I think that's the one key takeaway. Your self-worth is actually determined by yourself. And only you can see and understand the full picture and the full golden thread in terms of where you actually want to be. So having a vision is important, but not just having a vision, but having a mission. And there's a key difference. It's a key differentiator between the two. I think Niel did mention a lot of people have a lot of brilliant ideas, and there probably are no new ideas in the world. Every idea you've had has probably been thought before you. There's been many humans that lived and died. My 7-year-old daughter, for instance, has brilliant ideas every day. I'm sure they're $1 million, but she doesn't have the ability to take it forward and to make it become a business. And that's what differentiates an entrepreneur from a normal individual or an individual who's risk averse, like the way Niel actually said. So you need to be a risk taker. You need to identify what the risks are. So there is the dream, there is the idea or the understanding or the romanticism of entrepreneurship. For instance, you would think entrepreneur and you think Elon Musk, or you think Jeff Bezos, perhaps even Oprah. And is it wrong for you to strive to become them? No, of course not. How likely is it that you're going to become Jeff Bezos? Now, that's a key differentiating question. What did he do differently? And what do you need to do in order to become like him? And when I say like him, I don't mean be the richest man in the world. That wouldn't hurt. But be somebody that is successful. So I think it's important to identify and understand the risk. And in terms of risk, I just want to highlight some statistics. I've also been doing a little bit of research and read quite rigorously. So it's about 2 books a week in general. But statistics actually shows that 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs fail. And they fail within the first 18 months of starting their business. 1 out of 3 of them will fall into depression. And I think 30% of that 1 of 3, so 30% of that 33.3% go into extreme depression and would commit suicide. So that's the risk associated with taking a chance and starting a business, but without properly planning to actually implement or use tactical tools to make it a success. So Jean-Luc is 100% correct in saying, don't sit on your idea. There's 1,000 other people that have as good ideas, and they might even have a summa cum laude degree and be better than you when they start, if they start before you, because first move advantage is critical. But don't underestimate the value of planning. There's different types of planning. So when it comes to strategy, I know there's a lot of buzzwords. If you did your MBA like I did, there's a lot of buzzwords that MBA students would use, but planning happens every day. So there's short-term planning, medium-term planning, and long-term planning. And the difference between an entrepreneur and a normal stakeholder that isn't an entrepreneur is that an entrepreneur thinks way into the future. So he may start his business idea now and then think about scalability. How does it grow? Where can it grow? What are the pivot points? If I'm creating my website, do I create the platform that allows it to grow? Because he already has a lot of ideas, but he has limited capital to start up. So he's doing it as a phased approach. And I think that's the critical part in terms of understanding where you are, what you're doing, where you're going. So I'm bringing it back to vision. If you have a vision, you have an idea and you have a burning idea that needs to be developed into a plan of action. If you have a mission, now there's the deciding and critical part. So having a mission of becoming the richest person in the world, I don't really think that's a good mission. The reason why I say that is money is like breathing. You don't wake up in the morning thinking, oh, I need to take 30,000 breaths today. It comes naturally, and it comes when you actually add value, and you add value by creating a product that has a business need, or there is a need in terms of the market that you're in. And when we talk about a business plan versus strategy, when you have your idea, you need to understand and become an expert in the field or in your idea. For instance, who are your competitors? What are they doing? What differentiates them from you? What's going to differentiate your business from them? What is the price point of your business? Who's your target market? How are you going to advertise to them? I know Jean-Luc spoke about a logo, but he went into marketing. What's your marketing plan? How do you get to that target audience? I think important examples would be let's use typical ones that students would be aware of, not that you guys would shop at the shop, but Pep versus Woolworths. Are you the Pep or are you the Woolworths? If you're the Pep, why are you going to be the Pep? How much of volumes do you have? Can you afford to sell at such a low price point? If you Woolworths, what are you doing differently to actually provide such quality? And how do you know that Woolworths is not going to be aware of you as a risk and work you out of the business? Because that's what entrepreneurs do. They are very paranoid and they're always thinking about what's out to get them, what's going to affect their business. If you read, and you read a lot, and you should read a lot when you research, there are books called The Art of War, which tells you that business is like war, and there's a lot of people around you that are competing with the same resources for the same customer base, and you want to reach your end goal at the same time. So it's quite critical that you plan, and I think I'm going to end now in the next 2 or 3 sentences. There's a famous quote which says that poor planning is actually worse than no planning. So that just tells you how important it is to actually understand and to plan. And when you do your business plan, I know that Jean-Luc spoke about having a finance background, but not necessarily having all of the tools. So even studying finance, he identified, gosh, I don't necessarily have all of the tools to do the work and the business that I need to be in. So there's gaps that you need to identify in yourself. So it's important to know what your strengths are. And I think Jean-Luc spoke about what his strengths were, but it's more important to know what your weaknesses are. Do you know tax law? Do you realize that starting your business and creating the entity and not following the law could put you into jail? What are the rules? Do you have the skill set to run that your business plan might say you're going to have a 2 million rand profit at the end of the year, but if you have zero cash flow from day one, you're out of business before you even start, because cash flow is not profit. So these are critical points and key points that you actually need to utilize for your strategic research. So I think the concluding point from me, and it's a key learning that I did wrong when I did my first degree, was that at university you have a student number and you have a password. That means that you have access to all of the literature and research that's available to the university. Use this time. You have your idea, research it. Download all of the theses, all of the patents, all of the articles that are available for that topic, whether it's marketing, finance, strategy, technology. Read up about it. Become an expert so that when you create your project plan and you go about getting fundings, I think Jean-Luc spoke about being able to lose 1,000 rand a day. I don't think some of you may have that. So are you going to go to the bank to get funding? Are you going to go and get funding from an angel investor? I'm sure you guys have seen Shark Tank, the program. Do you have a pitch? How do you sell your idea? You only do that by actually understanding and having your business plan. And it's invaluable. And I think the time that it takes to create the business plan should not be considered sunk time. It's actually the time that allows you to evaluate the risks. And I think Niel spoke about risk in the start, and I also touched on it. The risks are the most important element, and understanding how to mitigate against those risks, because you don't want to be the statistic or the 8 out of the 10 people that fail. Why can't you be the 2? What makes those 2 the successes that actually survive? They're the ones that actually did and had a strat plan and understood the market to such a degree and were so flexible that they were able to adapt and learn as they went along. So I think I'm going to hand over to Mr. Niel, and let's listen to what he has to say in terms of his element.
Kevin, thank you so much. Yeah, I find myself in exceptional company here. You guys are well educated. I'm a little bit more a street fighter and a gutter man, knuckle duster and doing business that kind of way. But I've learned the basics. One thing that I want to warn against, guys, don't over-evaluate. It's paralysis by analysis. You can analyze something to death. Please, if you've got a good feeling, just execute. Don't worry. If you're going to worry and you're going to stress, you're never going to do anything. Just go for it. If you've got a good feeling, just go for it. Then I want to mention another word. Maybe this is a swear word for a lot of people, but that's how I start my business. It's called opium. It's not something you sniff through your nose or inject in your veins. Opium means other people's money. So in order to get other people's money, you must have relationships with people. That's where it starts. So how do you diminish your risk? If you are an individual and you take the risk on yourself, let me tell you my story. I was on the verge of having a legal practice and this business opportunity comes along. So the guy said to me, listen, this is what it's going to be. So we go to every bank in this country, business partners and everybody else. And I remember the one guy from APSA asked us, by the way, we do speed cameras and we do tolling, we do all the things you guys hate. So the one guy from APSA asked us, sir, if this camera business, this speed trap business doesn't work, can you take wedding pictures with these cameras? We said, no. No, it's not exactly that kind of camera. Anyway, they didn't want to give us 1 cent. Not one bank in South Africa. Nobody. Not at 33%. They didn't want to give us a cent. Right. So what we did is we rolled the dice, 3 of us, put everything. And that's the first point I want to make. If you're not prepared to do this, and don't multitask, guys. If you multitask, my wife always tells me she can multitask. I say that's why 90% of what she does is not right. Different word, but focus. If that is your thing, focus. So we rolled the dice. We bonded everything we have. The 3 of us. We imported 2 cameras from Australia. It's called Poltech. We put the 2 cameras up. There was a 3rd camera that they use as demonstration, and we opened a little bank account. But at that stage, we realized, listen, if this thing goes pear-shaped, we're gone. We're going to lose everything. So I said, guys, I've got a little bit of tax knowledge and a little bit of legal knowledge. What we're going to do is we're going to form 3 trusts. And the trust is going to own the shares and the trust is going to protect us. So we're going to stand outside of it. We must just have nothing in our names. And that's the way we'll continue with this. So said and done. 3 weeks after we've got our first trial site in a little town called Karedo. It's on the N2. Most of you probably won't know it. There's about 5 people and 10 dead horses there. The money was rolling into our account. And they said, but, can't we assist you? And so we said, no, okay, hold on, that's fine. We will self-fund us. We will buy the rest of the stuff that we need to buy. So what we did is we committed, that's the first point. We were not afraid of the risk and we gambled it. There's some fancy poet that was born in India, is an English poet that wrote about that if you're not prepared to do that, rather don't do it. Some of the points you guys make is, guys, if there is a low cost to entry to market, your chances that you will get pushed out of the market or the guy next door will do exactly the same as you do, the chances of success are low, except that is a fact of life. That's the way it is. If you've got a great idea and you can use it and create that intellectual property you have and make sure you are the owner of it, then you've got something, and then you can build it out. But now you must protect that intellectual property. And this is where I want to come in and say, take that intellectual property and remove it from yourself, you as an individual, and put it in a company, trust, whatever structure you want. Go to legal people and ask them how to do it. What I did is I put it in the trust, and we've got a company that's running it. So we just ensured that intellectual property was protected. If you don't do that, you will run into trouble. Because the first thing that come around, somebody else will smell this idea of yours And they will hear, because you will walk around because you're looking for money and cash, because that's what entrepreneurs do. They need money because they want to evolve this idea. And what's the first thing they ask you? They said, okay, that's fine. Give me a bit of equity. So give me 50% of your company and I'll give you 2 million rand. And that moment, you jump out of your skin. You run to your wife and say, we're rich. We're going to make it. I mean, we break through. Buy the Mercedes-Benz, get the new house, everything. I mean, we're going to do it. That is the last thing you should do. Please do not do that. If you want to use equity as a mechanism in order to get cash flow, make sure there's a way to get that equity back, and pre-decide that. When you draft a contract, you say, okay, you give me the money and you take the equity. But when I reach a certain point, it's two triangles that's inverse. When I get the money back and give the money back to you, I want my equity back at the same price. Because what you will do is the most expensive thing you will do in your life is to buy financing with equity. Let me give you an example. 3 of us, we split it 3 ways. And at that point in time, we said to the one guy, you know, we're not going to have a third of a share. We'll give you a full share. You know, so the one, we had 33 and the other guy 33 and the other guy 34. The difference in that share by the time that we exited the company was worth 2 million rand. That one share. That's a hard lesson to learn. So when you do these things, and if you really want to commit and really want to be an entrepreneur and do things differently, and there's millions of them, literally millions of them daily. Let me give you another example. While we're in this business, I identified that one of the biggest problems is something that you guys probably experience on a daily basis. The traffic officials have got a great difficulty in understanding your surname, writing down your name and writing eligible and understanding what the legal charges they want to charge you with and so forth. So I came up with the ideas, why don't we do it all electronically? So you will stop a motorist and say, sir, please give me your driver's license. He will swipe it on the machine and that will record your name, date and address. And then if you don't know, we're not wearing a seat belt, you're driving too fast, whatever, he will just tap and it will be a drop down and so forth. And he will have a little printer on his side and off it goes. Today, that was an idea 10 years ago. Today, that is the standard requirement in tenders in South Africa when you do speed law enforcement tenders in South Africa. Just an example of, and I sat on that idea for 18 months. And when I went to my CEO and spoke to him about it, he said, Neil, what did you do about it? I said, well, nothing. I just think it was a great idea. He said, shit, man, why didn't you speak to me, 18 months ago? I mean, we could have been well advanced on this. Once again, either believe in something and do it and accept the risk that goes with it, or just leave it. I understand. I know the point that was made by Kevin and Jean-Luc regarding, having to juggle a lot of things. I'm not a big fan of multitasking. Unfortunately, I think I'm a bit slow, but I've got a one-track mind. If I focus on something, I just go for it until it's either achieved or I know it's a disaster and it's failure. Just one other thing, guys, there's no magic formula in being an entrepreneur. One of the fundamentals of being an entrepreneur is just do the basics right and do it all the time. Let me give you an example. When I was a lawyer and I started my practice as an advocate and so on, so you must get all your instructions through attorneys and so forth. And the first thing I learned is it doesn't matter when somebody calls you, whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon while you're braaiing or anything. You always answer your calls. You always return your calls. There's nothing like it. If you're building a business, don't tell me it's family time. Don't tell me it's a Sunday. Don't tell me, there's no excuse that exists. If you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to build a business, you are committed. You're over the cliff. You're free falling. If you don't open the parachute soon, you're going to be smack. You're going to be a Bushman tekening on the bottom of the rock. That is, and that's what I would like to bring to this conversation. Is there's a lot of clever people out there, really, really smart people that's highly educated. But what I find lacking is the lack of execution and perseverance. For a business in South Africa to come to fruition and actually produce some revenue and then some profit, 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been proven 1,000 times. And the next 3 years, don't think you're going to relax after the 3 years. You're going to go through highs and lows again. 8 years into our business, we had to go and sit down and say, well, guys, it's that time. So we decided for the next 6 months, we will only take, the executive committee will only take 50% of the salary for the next 6 months, not to be repaid, in order to save the business. Every business goes through that. And then you must be prepared to do that. It never becomes easier. And when you grow from a small business, let me just give you an idea. We were 3 people in the year 2003. By the year 2018, we were employing 600 people and we turned over $500 million per annum. COVID has taken a big chunk out of us, but we've hit bottom and we're coming back again. But it's only through perseverance. So very well-known concepts like do the basics, execute, persevere. And all I can bring to you is that it actually works because I've been through that. Sean, that's my opening contribution. Thank you.
Can I jump in there quick, Sean? Thanks very much, Neil. I really appreciate that. It was, yeah, awesome. I think everything that Neil said, I hope you guys were taking notes. I was taking my notes down, so I hope you had yours. But what I want to just bring a slightly different perspective. So Neil's got that perspective of you need to commit, and 100% you need to commit. You need to put your time in, and you need to give it, balls to the wall to make sure this thing works. And that really is something that, even when I was juggling, it was always my priority. It always came first that you had to put your business in. Linked to that, though, however, is also what Kelvin said of the fact that only 8 out of 10 businesses do, actually make it at the end of 8 out of 10 fail, 2 out of 10 maybe make it, maybe one's actually successful. Is that you then need to kind of bring a perspective of, committing, but also knowing that you are all risks in it, can go one or two ways. So my kind of perspective, and what I also want to encourage you here on this side, is that use the time while you are at varsity, where you can't commit everything because you've got other things to do, but also you're not required to commit everything. I chose a very low barrier to entry, as Neil said, something that didn't cost me much money to get in, knowing that at the end of the day, it's not going to be my success factor because unfortunately that is the type of industry. But using something that's got a low cost to entry, a low downside if it goes wrong, to learn, while you're at the beginning, when you can't commit 100% to it, saying that, okay, great, well, let's take an opportunity. Let me rather use an opportunity to learn and actually dive into it and get started with it and know that this is not something that I should get caught up too far in. If your mission and your vision is to take it through the roof, then that's great. But at the same time, saying that this can just be a learning curve and then we can pivot into an all-out business, as Neil decided there. So it's just a slightly different perspective from my side. It's something that I've personally done. We've just started a new company last week, which was more of a Neil type of approach to it, where we've just got stuck in completely. It's our only focus now going forward. But there is a kind of pivot that you need to have at the same time to say, let me just take the chance that I have now, as opposed to waiting till I can commit 100% or having to drop out so I can commit 100%, knowing that there is this big risk that it doesn't work out at the end of the day. So yeah, slightly different. Neil, I don't know if you have a comment there.
I actually want to,
slightly different.
Jean, I actually want to come in. Just for reference, it's Kevin, not Calvin. just like
Oh, sorry, Kevin.
Jean,
Appreciate it. Sorry,
Jean.
my eyes aren't so good on a Friday afternoon.
100%. Okay, so I think everything that Niel said is 100%. I completely agree with him, and I think it's completely sound. But something that just occurred to me as he was speaking is that all three of us are from completely different generations. So if you had to use the buzzwords, I think you might be a baby boomer, Niel. I might be a millennial, and Niel, what are you? Do you even have a name yet, or are you
I think I'm Generation X or
Z?
something like that.
You're a Generation Z, which means you're last on the list. Yeah, so I think the new generation that is born now is Generation C for Generation Corona, COVID. But in terms of the mindsets, I think Niel said it very nicely that there's no magic formula and there's no recipe for success. I think it was echoed also by Jean as well, and that is we all have different mindsets. And if you have a look, the baby boomer mindset, which is very successful for reference, and it was the driving force for a lot of economic growth for the world in the past decades, has been that mindset of having a dedicated mindset of a activity that needs to be achieved and goals at all times, versus the more multitasking type of element, which is a very much my type of generation, which is the millennial type of generation, which absorbs some form of technology. But I was in the second year of campus when Facebook launched. So I don't share what you said, Jean, of being a Facebook junkie that's always on social media. I'm in between, versus you, who I know has a very nice Instagram account. So so I think I just want to echo what Niel said, which is that there is no magic formula. It depends on the individual, but I think he was quite sound in saying that it's about attitude. So if you have the right attitude, if you take the initiative, and if you have the integrity to make your idea a success, it definitely would work. Just one point, Niel, that I actually would like to bring up is I actually own, or my company owns, 182 road vehicles, or trucks, and 4 locomotives. I now know who's responsible for those horrible cameras, because I pay a lot of speeding fines every month, thanks to you, it seems. And we originally would get away with people taking down drivers' details incorrectly, but now they scan them. So again, you showed me a double middle finger, it seems, and you didn't even know it.
Yeah, guys, I don't know what generation I'm from, but the one thing I'm sorry about, and maybe this is a little bit off the point, is that one must understand the concept of value. Now, if you haven't bent your back for 5 days in a row over a spade in the heat of the summer, in a February in Paarl or Hex River Valley or the Doorns one, you won't understand what's the meaning of a day's work. It's hard and it's tough, and then you know what value is. Then you don't spend money recklessly. It doesn't become lifestyle, and that's what I found. A lot of people say they want to become entrepreneurs, but when you talk to him within 5 minutes, you realize this guy just wants to have a fancy lifestyle. He needs more money. He doesn't really actually want to create something. And that's many times is a slight but very important difference. That and what we did is the guys whose initial idea it was a road traffic engineer, Douglas Davey, who passed away unfortunately at the age of 59 while he was jogging. He said, you know what, we can save so many lives on the South African roads if we just have an electronic system. And that's where the idea was born, and we built a great company from that. Are we in dire straits right now? Yeah, we're in trouble. We struggle with COVID and everything that goes with it. But we've hit the bottom. We're turning it around because we were much more focused. There was maybe just 1 or 2 technical things, Sean, that I would like to give to the guys. Guys, in order to protect yourself with the element of risk, when you create a legal entity in order to keep it away from yourself and to protect yourself against claims and so forth. And if the thing goes pear-shaped, you can have various different, you can have trust, you can have companies and so forth. And I've said about the equity thing, don't sell off your equity. If you need, sometimes, and we've done it, if you need to sell off some of your equity in order to survive, just make sure that when you do that sale, that your minority control is of such a nature that you can still control the essence of your business. For example, you need, when a dividend is declared, if the minority doesn't vote for it, you should not allow them to declare dividends while it's to the detriment of the business. A crucially important thing. So there's many of them, but one example I think will suffice to say that's how I've learned the hard way. Where I got ripped off many times through other ventures where people just declared dividends and the business was going down. Okay.
I think, Niel, touching on your points that you've actually raised in terms of risk and COVID-19 or the pandemic, in terms of Pendulo, we've been also very affected. So in terms of strategy, and I spoke up in terms of my initial intro speaking about the importance of strategy, and we were talking about strategy for entrepreneurship, but when you're in the business, there's a different type of strategy, which is looking at diversifying the business and diversification so that you mitigate against risk. We thought that looking at different mining commodities, so we transport bulk minerals, which is inclusive of manganese, chrome, coal, lead, copper, zinc. And at the time, I was actually, and I'm the co-CEO, and just for reference, we have about 700 employees in the business, and it's about a 1.5 or 1.6 billion rand turnover. So that's the scale of the business in which we operate in.
Wow.
And in terms of operations, my understanding and our understanding as a team, because it's a team effort, is that we diversify the business by taking multiple commodities or transporting multiple commodities. In addition, we did some FMCG, some food, some minor transportation, but our bulk commodity or the primary driving force was bulk minerals, which we actually transported in raw material to external markets for further processing. Only to understand during the pandemic when we had the lockdown that none of those were classified as essential. So the fact that we consider ourselves so diversified, transporting one of the few transporters in the business that transported 6 or 7 different commodities, we actually found that the smallest element of the business, which was the business that transported canned products, Lucky Star, and coal for essential services, was actually the essential part of the business. And there was no way, even with I think you said analysis paralysis. Even if we did that, there would have been no way that we understood that risk unless we got into it. But I think what is critical, and I do want to touch on it, Niel, is being and having a legal background gives you incredible insight in terms of law and company law and setting up trust. Those are elements that I've gotten burnt with personally, and you're 100% correct. You lose a lot, you learn a lot when you actually make a mistake. But getting an understanding and researching that is so critical, and you need to do that right at the start. So before you even start your business, setting up the entity and making sure you limit the amount of risk to yourself as an individual is of such paramount importance. I think other elements you also need to look at is touching on risk is insurance, understanding how and what you need, understanding labor law, because you're going to be employing people, understanding if you, and because we live in South Africa, it's highly unionized. So if you're going to have operational staff, you need to understand union relations, negotiations in terms of people, and the leadership element. So I want to bring in a different theme, and that is leadership, which is the sense that leadership is of critical importance in business. And as an entrepreneur, you need to have soft skills of note. So I think Niel said it very nicely about relationships. You cannot have good relationships with people if people don't like you. And the only way you have relationships with people is if you have the right type of soft skills. If you're able to negotiate, if you're able to sell your product, if you're able to understand your product to such an extent that people buy you and not just the product, that's the key part. And I think that is critical, and I think it might be a gap for many of the guys that are logged on that are students, in the sense that I told you your greatest strength, which is you are a student and you're fresh, is also your greatest weakness, in the sense that you haven't been exposed to business. You may not have been exposed to politics. If you look at Niel, he's had exposure to different fields, different elements, different people, including the banks. So there's politics involved. So you may be the cleverest person or the most intelligent person in the room, but no one's going to buy your idea if they don't like you, and or if you don't have the right EQ skills to actually sell that idea so that people understand it. So I think it's leadership, and coupled to leadership is communication. So if you're able to communicate your idea, and I think, Niel, you said it very nicely about analysis paralysis. And my understanding or thinking was not that you analyze to the nth letter, but you understand it to such a degree that you're able to identify all of the risks and mitigate at least 90% of them when you start, or by the time that you start. But I think what is critical when it comes to actually understanding and evaluating your risk is to actually understand what are your gaps. And if you know you've got gaps, I think, Niel, you had partners. You need to make sure that those partners are also not lawyers. So all three of you don't think the same way. You cover different risks in terms of the business, because you bring in advantages, but when you have groupthink, you run into danger. So diversification in terms of your group is of critical importance. And I hear Niel, and I agree with him when he's speaking about equity, because the possibility of growth of your business, specifically if somebody else tells you they want equity, they identify the potential. So that should give you an indication of, I have something, I have an idea. But I think what is important, and if the banks turn you down, and if all of your funding fails, you may, as Niel has said, you may need to unfortunately swallow that very difficult pill and actually give up some of your equity, but then make sure that you partner with the right individual. And again, Niel is important in terms of what he said. Don't let that person come in and change the vision or the mission or the control of your business. Make sure that management control remains 100% within yours or within your gambit. And then, yes, if you can, and if you can afford to, buy back that stock as soon as possible.
Awesome, guys. I'm gonna take a point of order here to push us to our best advice from our speakers. Thank you so much, guys. It's really insightful, and I really enjoy the different generations and different ways of thinking that came out of the discussion. And at the end of the day, it's like that was said, there is no magic formula. There are different mindsets that can lead you to success if you are willing to commit and actually produce what you need to do. So I'm going to hand it over to our speakers to give their best advice. If you guys would like, I know COVID came on, 2020 has been extremely difficult. Your best advice could be related to COVID, maybe a rescue strategy, maybe especially insurance. Insurance was a very difficult space considering 2020. But I'm going to give it over to you guys to give us a one, not a one-liner, but a one principle best advice. Jean-Luc.
Okay, I'll jump in. So yeah, the problem with entrepreneurship is there's no one-liner. It's a discussion that could go on with hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs all over the world for hours and hours and hours, and I love getting the perspective from everyone. So sure, it's hard to wrap it up, but I think I want to reiterate something that I did slightly wrong and something that both of our other speakers brought up, which was relationships. You know, being a very type A personality that I am, you know, as soon as I wanted to do this, put my head down, kind of using that hard mindset of just committing and let's make this thing work. And the tough thing in that sense is that it is a aspect that is required to get to the end result, but it also leads to, you know, blinker type thinking, like a horse that's in a race shed, is that you put your head down and you go, and you might miss an opportunity that's around you, might miss a relationship that's key and pivotal. And what I've slightly changed now over the last 2 years is, you know, pulling more relationships into of making time to connect with panel speakers like this, making time to connect with people, because you don't know what opportunity is going to come out. You don't know what perspective they can bring into your business. It's not saying that you need to find the first person and bring it in because two heads are better than one. It's saying that, you know, be intentional, that you don't know everything, and by trying to do it on your own, you're not going to get there at the end of the day. There's going to be a scalability point of view that you're going to get stuck at. There's going to be a point of order that you don't understand, that you can't discuss. Building yourself and surrounding yourself with the right team members, whether they are just a friend that's helping as a consultant, just advising, giving a different perspective, whether it's a business partner that's in it building up your leg, whether it's a new chat that you have just on a once-a-month basis with a mentor, just to get a fresh perspective. Pull those relationships in from the start, because they are going to change your way of thinking, change your perspective, and ultimately allow you to equip yourself to make the best decisions at the end of the day. So that would be my one thing from something that I did short, was trying to do it on my own, bring people in. We are people, and as much as you want to do it by yourself, humans need other people to interact with, and you need to run it by them and get that relationship and those inputs around you. So that's mine. I see Kevin's nodding. I don't know if he had the same experience or not, but what's your one point?
No, I think I'm slightly different. I might be as clever as you, but I don't show it. So in terms of sorry, that was a stab. So my advice is slightly different in the sense that you need to be aware of the fact that I think Niel said it very nicely, and I think you echoed it, Jean-Luc. There's a lot of brilliant people. There's a lot of intelligent people. There's a lot of people that have ideas. Many of them don't take it forward. But I think when you talk about business, and if you talk about the art of war, there's a lot of brilliant people that have the exact same business idea as you. Some of them don't even have your business idea, but they just need to create an app, and they'll be able to absorb your business into theirs. And that's the reality of 2020. So I think my advice, and it's something that I actively try to do, and I don't do it very well, but I try my best, is to actively improve myself as an individual and to read as much as possible. So if you read up about leadership, if you read up about business, and if you do so continuously and you understand different principles, understand about economics, understand about business, it adds to the different layers of your paradigm and of your business world. And it also helps you to evaluate those relationships and gives you the ability to speak to somebody who's from the Trump generation, for instance, and have things to talk about because you've got knowledge regarding it. But I think continuous improvement is critical, because what differentiates you at this point in time to another stakeholder that has the same business? If you read a book a week, 52 weeks from now, you and that individual are not going to be in the same scale. You're going to be able to outwing, outplay, and basically survive in terms of any storm for the business. And I think if you are able to identify, improve, identify risks, and also plan for the future, you're then going to set up systems in your business so that you are able to learn, grow, and mitigate the risks. I don't think any of the three of us would have predicted a COVID-19. However, now that it has occurred, it's something that's well within our radar. And identifying the risk associated with it is things that we need to do. But we also now aware of the fact that there may be another pandemic that comes about. So I think, Sean, your comment about advice regarding COVID-19, I'm not sure that there is any right advice except for following what the health guys are actually saying, by diversifying your business to such an extent that you actually provide an essential service and are able to have money coming in and have people purchasing what you need or what you're producing is the critical part. But I think it was touched on, and as the closing part in my end, it was touched on, and that is the power and the importance of capital and understanding finance. So when money comes in, make sure you're very conservative. Always act as if you're running at a loss, so that when you have a bad month, like a COVID-19 lockdown, you have enough cash flow that allows you to survive. Because like Niel said, the business world that we live in will mean that you need to make some very tough decisions. And I think what is critical in terms of business is the sacrifice element when it comes to it, and understanding that if you are not willing to make those sacrifices, like I think Niel spoke about taking no salary or a limited salary. I think with hindsight, if there was better planning, and Niel, this is not against you, but in my end as well, in terms of my business, if we did better planning, less lavish decisions, we would have had a better cash flow in the bank, which would have helped us and allowed us to actually elevate and alleviate certain situations. So I think even to students that don't have a business, budgeting and being more accurate and being more educated about your finances is basically the first step, because I think that's my key closing point from all of the words that I've said. If you can be more money wise and educate yourself, that's the thing that actually would be the differentiating factor for your business.
Kevin, yeah, that's you guys are clearly very well educated, and you guys are 10 times more cleverer than I will ever be in my life. There's one word that I want to close off with, a very important word. That is criticism. How do we deal with criticism? And you know what? The biggest business in the world today, well, maybe the second biggest, is built on that word, criticism. Amazon. If you go and ask the CEO of Amazon, why are you always ahead? How come you got this fantastic business? Where does all the ideas come from? He says, you know what? What's the best thing I can have is the criticism from my clients, because they tell me where I'm going wrong. I don't absorb all of them, but I evaluate them and then I improve accordingly. And that's one thing I found, especially amongst young entrepreneurs, that they get despondent because they get criticized. This thing doesn't look right, it's not with it, it's not cool, it's all those funky words. Take that on board, evaluate that, implement it. That's free advice, guys. That's free advice. That's how you build a product. That's why they test medicine on people, first on rats and then monkeys and then people. So, and you get it mainline, straight, first time. Just use it. And if I can advise any new entrepreneur, don't be thin-skinned when you're an entrepreneur. Suck up that criticism and make something good out of it. It's not bad. Thank you.
Awesome.
Sean?
Awesome, guys. Well, we didn't have a huge influx of questions. That is what we wanted to get to. I think the agenda is completed. There is William Brederer asked, taking risks as a student, as early. In other words, I think our audience will mainly be students, and the advice and insights given is I think, way above student level. I think you can build a successful business to anyone that listened in, and that this event will reach. But starting a business as a student, taking the risk now, and as opposed to going to work and building up capital for a few years and then starting to launch your business. What are the opinions of a panel? Do you guys think you should rather take it on right now, or try and build up a bit of cash flow and a bit of backing yourself before you take on the business?
My suggestion would be is like my father did it, many years ago. He had Standard 6. He had to borrow a bicycle from his friend, and then he had to cycle to sick people and cut their hair. Nothing electric, with a pair of scissors and a cutthroat. You guys know what a cutthroat is? That's the thing you shave with. Normally, it's a big long knife and a bone. So, and all he did is, those were the days of the pounds and half krone and shillings and pennies and so. And all he would do is, whenever he comes home and he got the money, the half would go into the savings, the other half he lives on. Him and my mother. And that's what he taught us. And that's I call it the cow principle. If you want to do something and you've got a cow, never sell the cow. That's obvious. Never slaughter the cow, because if you keep the cow and you can sell milk 300 times from it, then you can make money and you can keep the cow. Yes, you have to feed it, so put away some money from it. And that's the simplicity of it. If you are a student and you have to study and to work, well, get yourself a cow and then milk the cow slowly. That's all I can say. It's as simple as that.
100% agree. I don't think we could have said it better. All done, Neil. That's it.
I think, Neil, in terms of your comment with the cow, I think you completely understand Hinduism, so well done. But in terms of, I think in terms of the question, I can only speak to my personal experience. But Neil said it very nicely, in the sense originally is that there's no one magic or silver bullet. So it depends on the individual, and it depends on the idea, and it depends on the timing. I personally went first into corporate, raised capital, saved up for it. When Niel speaks about being on the wrong side of the tracks, I don't think I was allowed to be even near the tracks. So that tells you what your inputs are. So everybody that's listening in, or people that will listen in, they come from many different places, and there's no magic formula. So irrespective of how you get to the starting point, the critical point of this entire discussion is start. So whatever your inputs are, get there, get yourself ready, do your planning, and then start. And make sure you have the funds, preferably without giving away your equity. So that's the advice that we have.
Awesome. If I can jump in there, I think you guys have, really explained it as well as you can. I just want to elaborate on William's question at the same time, just so everyone knows, when you go work in a company, I'm working as a management accountant at a tech company as well. When you work at a company, we're not just going there to raise capital in the sense, it's not just to get financial capital. Capital refers to so many other ideas. There's an intellectual capital that you're going to acquire, you're going to be in a place, learn from people that you couldn't even think that you're going to learn from, different experiences. You're going to have a relationship, a human capital that comes into it, building good connections, building things that might open doors in the future that you could never, ever, actually expose yourself to without it. Building personal skills, interpersonal skills. And the capital that we talk about, often is just the financial side. It's the equity, it's, getting money, getting debt, but don't discount that. In every aspect of your life, you can gain capital. If you take it from a holistic point of view, there's always ways to learn, there's always ways to empower. So yes, as Kevin said, everyone has different starting points. Maybe someone does need to go and get into corporate because they need to provide for their family and be the breadwinner at the same time. There are different ways, but don't just look at it as a financial capital. Look at it as a holistic capital that you can grow, develop yourself, and as long as that's an intentional decision, take from it what you can and then move on and go with it later on in life. So yeah, just for everyone's perspective, that's currently what I've done. I decided from the entrepreneurial corporate structure, expose myself to something slightly different that I've got, to be able to upskill, build that capital on all different bases, and then take the idea. I've got a vision, I've got a mission, I know where I'm going at the end of the day, hopefully, and things change along the way. And this is part of the capital building process to get me there. So yeah, that's my interpretation of William's question.
Awesome, guys. That was really in depth. And I think that's throughout the whole event, there was really some major points where a lot of value, I think, would be added to anybody watching. So a huge appreciation to the speakers. Thank you guys so much for taking your time and inspiring our future entrepreneurs, actually really giving back to South Africa. I know COVID has been tough. I think if we can inspire even just one entrepreneur to make a success out of his business with this event, I'm over the moon. So thank you guys so much for taking the time. And then as well to the team that worked together for hosting this event, Chloe Lakov, Sabrina King, and my partner, Tandule Tun Changaze. Thank you guys so much. Always a pleasure working with you. I see Sabrina popped a last question. I'm almost going to address it because I think, especially for the Stellenbosch uni students tuning into this and to our other events, it was mentioned in the event earlier, we have access to extremely valuable information free of charge with our student accounts. Any information regarding legal, business-wise, there's so much at our disposal. It's just about asking a few questions, asking around, and actually getting into researching. I don't think it will be such a struggle to find anything actually in the information age that we are moving into. It's more about picking the right information than finding information. So yeah, guys, I'm gonna.
Sean, can I jump in there? Sorry, before you end it. So Sabrina, exactly what Sean says. We've got lots of resources. Dive in there, but much like Niel said at the beginning, also, don't skimp on this. Don't say, "Oh, I don't have a lawyer. I'm just going to go and make a plan quick and sign an agreement and get things going." If it is something that has intellectual property rights, if it is something that has value to it, if it's an agreement. I lost out with a partner severely in one of my earlier ventures, and if I had just taken that a little bit of initiative from the start and just gone and got the lawyer and put one little sentence in the clause, it would have made the world of a difference. So sometimes you need to jump in and reach out, and pay for it. They are free. There's the legal aid shops that you can go to. There's one in Stellenbosch in the Acrestad Mall. You know, they do help out in those sense. For free, they're pro bonos. But otherwise, dive in, do your research, find the resources you've got access to, speak to people that are out there. Your lecturers can help. They help me get my stuff up and running. And then if you need to take it that step further, don't skimp on it, because it might bite you in the bum later. That's my 2 cents.
Very, very valid. I also think
Sean, if there's any questions that come up after the fact, you're welcome to share them with us. If you email them to us, we're open to it.
That was the one thing I was going to mention now, as well, with regards to advice, and I think relationships was mentioned throughout this event as well. I think building relationships with people will be one of the best skills you will ever learn. And like Kevin said, if there are questions, if you want a bit of clarity on something of the event, I'm sure that all 3 of our speakers will be more than willing to assist you and give you some more insights if you are ready and committed to getting started. So guys, I think I'm gonna end it there. We've got 3 minutes. I don't want the session to cut us off automatically, so I'm going to end it. Thank you so much for the event. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much to the speakers, and we will see you on the next event. Please stay tuned and keep seeking for opportunities. Thanks so much for tuning in. Cheers, guys.
Okay.
Cheers. Sean, just a very quick question. You will send me the particulars of Jean-Luc and Kevin.
Of course.
Yeah, okay, please.
Thanks, guys.